Journey in the Self. I'm your host, Sarah. So, the topic for today is the source of happiness. As I spent a little time in meditation and contemplation over what the topic for today's show was going to be, it came to me that as I've had conversations with people over time, reflections that I had when I took my solar return trip to Puerto Vallarta, and things that I've read have all led me to this particular topic. Um, I can recall having a conversation with my father, and he was telling me about places that he was considering to relocate to. And as he suggested those places, one of the themes that he repeated was that, he thinks that being in those places would be peaceful and make him happy. And I recall telling him that it's not the place, because wherever we go, we bring ourselves. And I bring that up because a lot of us look in the wrong direction when we're seeking happiness. We think that it might be, finding the right location, the right place. Or we might think that it's important for us to have the right things in our lives, to attain certain achievements, to reach certain goals, and that if we attain those things, that we'll find happiness. But we know that there are quite a number of accounts of people who have attained all that there is to attain, have acquired riches and all the things that they wanted, but have found happiness elusive. Then we go to the social front. Everyone's, there's online dating everywhere. Different ways for people to connect. There's a myriad of different debates, discussions. People have all these disputes and comments on social media, YouTube, all about finding the right person to make them happy. And there's debates about the type of woman or type of man that is going to make them happy. And in the black community, there's debates about the type of black man that needs to have certain qualities in order to make a woman happy, or conversely, the type of qualities a woman should have in order to make them happy. People are looking elsewhere, so to speak, to find the right woman or man. But it's interesting in that all of those attempts are erroneous in what their focus is. And all of those focuses are common in that all of those sources lie outside of ourselves. We suffer under the illusion that happiness is to be obtained outside of ourselves. And so, inevitably, we become disappointed when attempts to acquire happiness from those sources end up failing us. And then we look outside to find the reason that it didn't work. And so we look outside of ourselves to blame, to find the reason that it didn't work out. It obviously has nothing to do with us. That's the last place anybody wants to look. So we see on social media, everybody's pointing fingers, blaming black men aren't this or that. You know, they're not this or that. They can't do this or that. Black women can't do this or that. You know, everybody's looking and blaming everyone but themselves, as if we have the power to change anyone else, and we don't. But that's where everybody spends their efforts, trying to figure out how they can influence or change another person to where they would feel like they would meet the qualities that they require, that they think that would bring them happiness. But the truth is that if everyone who sat down and wrote down all the criteria that they feel that someone would need to meet in order to guarantee their happiness, and if they got someone that met all of that criteria, happiness will continue to be elusive for them, because happiness does not come from them. It will not come from them. It will never come from them. No one will ever find the right person to make them happy. It's impossible. It's impossible for us to make another person happy. It's impossible for another person to make us happy. So I'm going to read a passage from a book, the conversations that my spiritual master has had with people. And there was a story when she was talking to and counseling someone, and in the midst of that discussion, a baby started crying. And so my master Alma inquired as to why the baby was crying, and she said that the little one had lost their pacifier. The pacifier fell out of her mouth. And so when the mother found the pacifier in the baby's carriage and replaced it in her mouth, the baby stopped crying and was content. And the point of that story was that the contentedness that the child had in the pacifier, was that a permanent source of content or happiness? or was that temporary? And so, in the same way, because we know, of course, the answer to that question: no, it's not a permanent source of happiness. It's a temporary source of happiness. Um, there's going to be a point when the pacifier is not going to suffice, and the baby will cry when it gets hungry or feels like it needs something else. So in the same way, the things that we experience, the things that we might do, things that we might acquire, um, the people who may come into our lives, the effect is the same as the pacifier for us. It will satiate us for a period of time, stop us from crying for a little bit, but it won't last. And we'll find ourselves unhappy again. So the attainment of those things, whether it be a person, place, or thing, only provides us with the temporary source of happiness. So where do we go for happiness? Before I come to answer that question, which you probably by now have guessed where it is. But before I get there, let's just go back for a little while. And as I brought up the story of the infant, I think it would make sense for us to go there ourselves. And as we come into the world, we realize that we came from spirit. We are spirit. That we are not the body, we're not the mind, we're not our senses, we're not our personality. We are infinite. We are the substratum of the universe. We are peace. We are love. We are happiness. That's where we come from. But when we come into the physical realm, we lose sight of the fact that that is who we are. Our conscious connection to that is severed. And I made it a point to say that our conscious connection is severed because the connection is not truly severed. It's that we're not conscious of that connection. Our perception of it has been lost. But we know that intuitively that our natural state of being is that of happiness, is that of peacefulness, contentment. We know that innately, even as infants. So we go through our lives on a search to find that, to basically to get back to that state of being, to get back to that state of peace, to get back to the source of happiness, to return ourselves to our natural state. But due to the times that we live in, we're not made aware of what that source of happiness is, the process that we may go through to reattain that state. During the golden ages of humanity, which should have been about approximately 10,500 years ago, at the height of human civilization. As we know, human civilization goes through cycles. It's not linear. And so we attain to the higher point, the peak of civilization, wherein our consciousness is at its highest point, that we are fully awakened, that we are conscious of who we are truly, and everything in civilization is designed to help facilitate us being at that point of awareness. But now we're at the opposite side of that cycle, where instead of being the golden ages of light, we're at the nadir, the darkest point in the human cycle of, I would say, revolution instead of evolution, because the cycle revolves. So, the knowledge of how to attain to that, our natal or true state, has been hidden from us. But we know that that's where we're supposed to be, that we're supposed to be happy, that that's supposed to be part of our experience. And so we go through life looking to find that, because we know that that's where we're supposed to be. Our problem is that we don't know where to find it, and so then we get deceived, conditioned, acculturated. We grow up in families where they don't know. They only have ideas of how happiness is to be attained, but have not experienced it themselves. And so we watch and are influenced by things that we see. We get influenced by things that our families say, how they grew up, what their perceptions of where happiness is to be found. Many of us have, uh, come through some type of religious tradition where the truth is hidden. There's only a portion of it being revealed to us, and so we get we don't get the full picture. We get a distorted view of how to attain to happiness, how to attain to eternal life, eternal peace. So we find that the religion is satisfactory because it's been purposely distorted or had aspects of it hidden from us. Though the original intent was for us to be able to return to that state. That's indeed what religion is to reconnect us to that eternal source. So again, we innately know that that's where we're supposed to be, that we're supposed to be in a state of happiness, state of eternal happiness, but we don't know where to find it. And so we get socialized into thinking that it lies outside of ourselves. We feel like we can, if we just attain a number of things, we make enough money, have a certain career, have a certain type of person, or able to travel and so forth, that we'll be able to find it. But as long as we're looking outside of ourselves, we'll find it to be elusive. So find ourselves because everything that we try to do and successful. Okay, so we have a call on hold. Question?
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Hear you.
I could barely hear you all. I'm just listening in. I don't want to interrupt. I was just listening to you. You are making some very key points, brother. Please continue to speak.
All right, thank you, my sister. And you let me know if you have a question or
Okay.
clarify something. So, so we look outside of ourselves, and we end up getting frustrated. Sister, if you would mute yourself, unmute. So, constantly being frustrated and find ourselves unable to obtain happiness from the sources that we're looking for, accepting them to be. Some people even told us that we do this, do that, we'll find happiness. So we have some noise in your call. If you mute yourself, we'd appreciate that. So the answer to our question is that the source of the happiness is within ourselves. So I mentioned that when I took my solo return trip, I thought a little bit about, what I would do. And I considered the things that people suggested that I do. And as I contemplated that, I realized that I didn't really want to do any of those things because I realized that none of those things would result in me being happy. That I would only be doing it because that's what people said that I should do. Doing it. I knew that none of those things were going to be peace or enjoyment. So instead, I spent time, meditation, reading, contemplation, and then just really coming to the realization that nothing outside of me was going to be happiness. And so the journey for me was to continue to just understand myself, understand the things that I may experience that would bring me sorrow, and realizing that whatever sorrow that I might experience has nothing to do with the circumstances or another person. So I spent some time, in reflection. And reflecting on the times where, I experienced pain in my life, realizing that the pain didn't come from what the other person did, that the source of the pain was also from within myself, because it came from me having an expectation. And that's a key word there. It came from me having the expectation that I would have happiness by being in that experience with that person, or that having an experience and whether it may have been blissful, but having an end, what brought forth pain. So it's important that we spend some time really spend more time really gaining an understanding of ourselves, and that's where something that most of us do not do. We don't spend much time really trying to gain an understanding of ourselves. We're always looking outside, either the solution or the cause. We don't spend a lot of time on introspection and reflection. But that's where the answer is. So I would look back at some of the painful experiences that I had and realize that the pain came from the expectations that I had. Expectations that maybe I would find lasting, loving relationship, I would be happy then. And, and I have experienced happiness from this type of experiences, but as it is in the world, everything in the world is transitory. Everything is subject to change. So losing those things creates pain for us because of the fact that those things are external to us. So the objective is not to find happiness outside of ourselves, because it ends up just being just like the pacifier child. When it's taken away, we cry. We experience pain. We experience sorrow. And so the happiness that we want should not be conditional upon, whether something stays with us or not, whether it be a person, place, or thing. That the happiness that we want should be internal and eternal. And it's only the internal that's eternal. I'll say that again. It's only the internal that's eternal. So that it can be that we're at peace and contentment wherever we are. We're at peace and contentment whether we have everything or nothing. We're at peace and contentment no matter what the circumstances are. That all things around us can change, but we don't. That we're at peace, we're tranquil. It's like tranquility of the waters that I'm looking out the balcony of where I'm staying right now. That's where we want it to be. But that will not come from outside of us. Ever. And unless we change our focus and begin looking within ourselves in order to be able to find that peace, contentment, happiness, that we're going to be frustrated with all the experiences that we have. We're going to be frustrated with our experiences with people because we're placing an unrealistic expectation upon them, placing an unreal expectation upon circumstances and the attainment of things. Certainly having things will make things easier, but even that is contingent upon our state of mind. And so it's control of ourselves that's going to bring us what it is that we want, which is the state of peace and contentment. So, what do we do? It's important that, again, we stop looking outside, and then begin to develop awareness. Of course, I recommend that the first thing that we start with is beginning a regular practice of meditation and evolving forward from there. And naturally, meditation is going within. Meditation is something that will expand our awareness of ourselves. To realize that the source will help us realize that the source of sorrow that we experience all has to do with our state of mind, which we can change. Whatever state of emotion that we're in at any given moment is subject to change. And we have the power to change it. We're not victims of the circumstances. The circumstances are the direct result of our state of consciousness, our state of mind. So it's important that we begin to change our perspective about things and realize that our perspective has been backwards. It's time for us to stop looking outside for the source. It's time for us to stop looking outside of ourselves for the solution. Both the solution and the cause of our problems is the same. Both of those are within ourselves. And when we can begin to start taking responsibility for our state of being, or our state of mind, refrain from blaming the circumstances, blaming other people, saying that other people did this to us, or that to us, that other people made us mad. We begin to be able to empower ourselves. We transition from being victims into being victors. We become empowered. Empower ourselves. So the meditation will help us to be able to expand our awareness of ourselves, become more aware of the fact that we are thinking, and that as we are thinking, we are creating. As we are thinking, we are putting ourselves into an emotional state. And based upon the emotional state that we're in, we will engage in certain actions, depending upon the nature of our thoughts. Focused thought will bring forth certain actions for us. Focused thoughts will also attract the energy of those thoughts, which will bring circumstances into conformity with it. But then, will also affect us. And so the more we end up spending time in meditation, the more aware of ourselves that we become, more aware that we are thinking, more aware of our emotional state. The more aware that we become, the more we become able to change those things, change the channel of our thought, change the nature of emotions by reflecting upon what it is that we're thinking about in the moment. And, the moment is important. Realizing that the past is not relevant to us. As my spiritual teacher tells us, that the past is a canceled check. There's no value inherent in the past. The only value inherent in the past is from the lessons that we can learn from our experiences. And once we were able to reflect back upon those experiences and learn the lesson from them, such that we don't continue to repeat them if there were things that didn't produce the results that we wanted, then, we can gain benefit from it and discard it. And so, it's important to learn not to have any regrets. Everything that we experience is beneficial to us if we take the right perspective. Things that we may consider to have been mistakes can be beneficial to us if we look at it at the right perspective and be able to gain wisdom from it and learn how to apply that wisdom into how we're going to deal with the now. So there's the importance of being present. Then there's the importance of then there's the future. So many of us are either thinking about the past or anxious about the future. But it's important to realize that we create in the now. So anxiety is caused by the worry that we have about what may occur in the future. Many people who I point out, who I counsel, I have given my own definition of what fear is. And my definition of fear is the expression of faith in a negative outcome. I'll repeat that again. Fear is the expression of faith in a negative outcome. How do you say that, Sarah? Because if one was not confident that a negative outcome would come to pass, why would a person be fearful? So one is only fearful if one believes that something is negative is going to happen, and believes it so intently that it causes stress, discomfort, and worry. But the issue is that because we're focused on it, that's exactly what we will bring past. And so that's another reason for us to be aware, to have the awareness to be conscious of what it is that we're thinking or what our emotional state is at any given moment, because both of those things are the elements of creation. We're not conscious of what it is that we're thinking. If we're not conscious of the nature of our emotional state, we will be unconsciously creating things that we do not want in our lives. And so we want to be conscious about what we create. That will come from awareness. And so the more awareness that we have, the more that we'll begin to realize, and as we reflect on things, that the things that we thought were going to bring us happiness did not. And the more we are able to reflect on those things and go within and spend time in reflection on it, at some point we'll come to the realization that that search is fruitless, that there's nothing that can be attained outside of us that will bring us happiness. And that was part of what my experience was when I went on the solar return trip, was that all the things that my mind was bringing to pass about the things that I should do or things that people had suggested that I do, realizing that none of those things will end up resulting in any happiness. In fact, not only would they not, they will ultimately result in unhappiness. So, there's only so much to be gained from any of the temporary sources before they end up becoming a source of pain. And so the more I spent in introspection and reflection, the more resolute I became about wanting to go within and let go of the illusion of attaining happiness from some of those, not some, all the external sources. Not to say that it's things that I don't want, but letting go of the illusion that any of those things would bring me happiness. To get rooted in the knowledge that what I need to do is to find peace, contentment, and happiness from within myself. And so for me, it was then making that commitment to not only continually engage in meditation, but to expand our spiritual practices in order to be able to get in tune and to reconnect with the eternal source of happiness, which is the spirit. And, because that's where my focus was, certainly life brought to me opportunities in order to be able to deepen my spiritual practice, which is what I'm doing now. But that said, however, we still face things that we face in life, and it can be challenging because we live in a world where the perception is constantly focused on the attainment of things that are outside of us, and we're constantly programmed with the illusion that the things outside of us are going to bring us happiness. And as we look around us, we see everyone engaged in that pursuit. If we listen to anything on the radio, we're programmed into, based upon the lyrics or whatever it is that we're listening to, that happiness will be found outside of ourselves. We watch something on television or the movies. We are inevitably going to be, if we don't have a high level of awareness, we're going to be swayed back into that. And also we have to overcome our habits and patterns and things like that. And, that just doesn't happen overnight. So it requires, continuous practice and focus, for ourselves, because, if we're not intentional about the things that we do, then, we just basically fall back into our program patterns, things that we have developed competency in, which is essentially the state of unconscious competence. The problem is that we become unconsciously competent about things that don't lead us in the direction that we want to go. Will not lead us to the attainment of the goals that we want. They'll just, continue to keep us in a pattern and cycle that we've been familiar with repeating, or repeating from what we've observed from our friends and family. So, it's time for us to basically break our own patterns. But it only will begin with us being able to expand our awareness and be more intentional about the things that we do, intentional about the things that we think, intentional about the things that we say and do, so that we become consciously competent about the things that we truly want, and that will lead to us being able to attain the true happiness that we desire. But it will only come if we begin to shift our focus from outside of ourselves and begin to focus inward. Realize we will not attain happiness from the attainment of anything outside of ourselves, ever. Whatever pleasure, whatever happiness that we experience from external sources will only be temporary and will ultimately result in our pain and sorrow. I'm going to read a little bit more from this book and speak a little bit more on it. Someone was speaking to my teacher, and she says, "It is said that one is bound to go through immense pain and sorrow before the realization of self," which is just what I just mentioned. Is this statement correct? And she says, "Even otherwise, there is sorrow and pain in life. Spirituality is not a journey forward, it's a journey backward. We return to our original source of existence. In that process, we have to pass through layers of emotions and tendencies we have accumulated so far," which is what I was referring to. We have become consciously competent at doing things, and so much so that we do them unconsciously. And all of those things have led us to where we are right now and have resulted in a lot of pain for us. And so we have to let go of those things. And even as we go through the process of letting go of the things that we've become habitual at, we will perceive pain from the loss of that. Because we had attained some temporary happiness for some of those things. But if we really engage in some introspection, true introspection, we'll realize that all those things that we did get temporary happiness in, all those things that we habitually done, have ultimately resulted in pain for us. So we've had some pleasurable experiences. And so it says in that process, we have to pass through layers of emotions, of tendencies we've accumulated so far. That is where the pain comes from, not from outside. By going through those layers with an open attitude, we are in fact crossing over and transcending them, which will ultimately take us to the abode of supreme peace and bliss. And so it's through going through within ourselves and gaining an understanding of the things that we have done over the course of our lives that have brought forth pain and sorrow, and beginning the process of being able to let go of those things and transcend them, realizing that those things are the sources of our pain because of the expectations that we've placed upon them and the attachments that we've had to them, and realizing that we must go through the temporary pain of letting go of those things in order to be able to attain to the eternal peace and happiness that we seek. And so she says, before reaching the top of a mountain, one has to be in the valley at the foot of the mountain, the other extreme. So we have to go to a low place. Likewise, before in the peak of happiness, the experience of the other end, that is sorrow, is unavoidable. So our true source of happiness is our sense of separateness, but from God, from the Supreme. But we aren't aware of that. And that's what forces us to seek happiness from outside of ourselves. And so when we're able to basically reorient ourselves and realize that our search for happiness has been misguided, has been misdirected, and to reorient ourselves into looking within for that source and to really deeply engage in that journey into ourselves, that we will begin to realize that that's where peace, contentment, and happiness is. So I'm going to leave it there, and I think we'll continue on with this, and certainly I do want to encourage you to ask questions, and I would imagine that this would have invoked a number of questions for you. But I wanted to, and I wanted to compel you to spend some time on some introspection and insight in developing expanded awareness. Because I know it can be hard. I know, how many people are really frustrated. And you can see a lot of that in society now, particularly, within the relationship realm. And people's perspective about relationships is like just completely unrealistic. But even relationships are not going to succeed, and they're like completely in shambles right now because of the expectations that people place on them, believing erroneously that these things are that another person can possibly bring us happiness. And it is because of that unrealistic expectation that relationships do not work, cannot work, and will not work. And so whether it is that we want to experience a relationship or, if we're at peace with being, or if, we're not in one, and maybe we don't care at this particular time, it all ends up going back to the same thing. Happiness has to be attained within oneself. And unless we do that, we will not experience happiness in a relationship or in any other circumstance, because it is not coming from outside of ourselves. So let me go ahead and end there. Certainly tune in next time, and I encourage you to call in. And then if you want to go into this a little deeper on a personal level, then do reach out to me. Be happy to be of assistance and service to you in that capacity in your journey in the self. So do reach out to me. Reach out to me on Facebook. Send me a message over Messenger. I'm Sarah. Alternately, you can go to my website, which is www.sa-ra.org. www.sa-ra.org. Reach out to me with questions there, or schedule the free consultation discussion. Help you get the right track, but ultimately the work is going to be yours. So it'll just come down to, as Prince said, whether you're willing to do the work. All right. So with that, I will greet you with the kinetic words of peace, Hotep, and we'll see you next time here on Journey in the Self.